Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the United States government has just quietly decided the internet is simply like too powerful to share with Europe
Mm.
or Asia.
Oh, right, or South America.
Yeah, exactly, South America. Just imagine if the absolute foundational layer of the digital economy was suddenly, walled off, restricted entirely to American soil because the technology had crossed this invisible threshold from being just a commercial product to, well, a national security asset.
I mean, it sounds like science fiction, right? Or maybe the plot of a really tense Cold War thriller. But structurally speaking, we're kind of watching the opening moves of a very similar scenario play out right now. Not with the internet, obviously, but with frontier artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are looking at this incredibly quiet, but just massive shift in how the world's most powerful technology is being handled.
It's huge.
It really is. So the catalyst for our conversation today is this deeply researched op-ed analyzing a reported move by Washington to restrict foreign access to Anthropic's most advanced AI models, specifically the systems known as Fable 5 and Mythos 5.
Right, and based on the reporting we've seen from Reuters and the AP, this isn't just some, minor regulatory tweak. We are looking at a major export control paradigm shift here.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to set the stage before we dive into the economic mechanics.
Yeah, we definitely need some ground rules for today's discussion because we're analyzing geopolitics and national security, which naturally involves, highly polarized policies.
Exactly, and our goal here today is strictly impartial. We are not here to endorse Washington's policy, and we're not here to criticize it either.
Right, we're just mapping out the arguments, just looking at the unintended global consequences and the economic ripple effects that are presented in this analysis. Has Washington basically told the world that the future cognitive infrastructure of the global economy is available only at its discretion?
And that phrase right there, cognitive infrastructure, I mean, that is the linchpin of the entire argument. We have to stop thinking of AI as just like a clever chatbot that summarizes your emails or writes some code snippets.
Oh, exactly. The thesis of the op-ed is that frontier AI is becoming the underlying operating layer for the modern nation state.
Right, so let's break down the mechanics of what that actually means. When we say operating layer, we're talking about the software that, say, models complex drug interactions for an entire national healthcare system.
Yep.
We're talking about the algorithms that are optimizing the logistics of major shipping ports, or systems monitoring a whole country's power grid for anomalies.
And the architecture analyzing real-time cyber defense. I mean, when a technology embeds itself that deeply into the critical functions of a society, it literally ceases to be a normal export.
Right.
You can't treat a model like Mythos 5 the same way you treat a shipment of jet engines or, consumer software. It becomes the bedrock.
Wait, so if we use that classic analogy that everyone uses, that AI is the new electricity, restricting access to these advanced models isn't like embargoing a luxury good.
No, not at all.
It's not telling a foreign capital, hey, you can't buy our newest smartphones. It's quite literally telling an allied nation, we hold the keys to your 21st century power grid, and we might just turn it off if the political winds change.
Yeah, that's exactly the framing.
How does any functioning government realistically swallow that, or respond to being told their economic future depends on permission from Washington?
Well, what's fascinating here is the short answer is they don't. No serious government can accept a reality where their entire economic and scientific future relies on an API connection that, a foreign executive order could just sever overnight.
Right.
The analysis does acknowledge that in the immediate short term, Washington might genuinely preserve its technological lead. By drawing a really hard border around Fable 5 and Mythos 5, American companies and agencies get an exclusive sandbox to develop next-generation tools.
Sure, so it creates this massive, albeit temporary, asymmetric advantage. But this entire thesis hinges on the blowback, right? If you tell an ally their power grid is conditional, their immediate desperate priority becomes building their own power grid.
Exactly, which triggers a fierce global backlash. I mean, the language of sovereign AI wasn't really mainstream a few years ago, but suddenly it's literally the highest priority in capitals all around the world.
Yeah, the op-ed mentions specific reactions. Like in Britain, you have ministers across the political spectrum urgently auditing their domestic AI compute and talent.
And the European Union is heavily accelerating its push toward absolute digital sovereignty. They're funding local data centers, local model training, all of it.
But I think the most striking example of this friction is India. The paradox there is just incredible when you actually look at how the American tech ecosystem operates.
Oh, the dynamic with India perfectly illustrates the geopolitical sting of these restrictions. Just think about the engineering talent inside these premier American AI labs, right?
Yeah.
You have brilliant, highly skilled Indian engineers and researchers working inside the United States, literally writing the architecture for systems like Fable 5.
Right. They're the ones building the absolute bleeding edge of the frontier.
But the moment that model compiles and crosses a certain capability threshold, those same engineers' home country is suddenly viewed as a security risk.
Wow.
The system they helped build is just walled off from the Indian domestic market. So the lesson the rest of the world absorbs from that is brutal.
Dependence on American frontier AI is no longer just a commercial dependency. It's a severe geopolitical vulnerability.
And the distinction between those two things is massive. Like, a commercial dependency means I'm worried the vendor might raise my enterprise subscription fee by 15% next year.
Right, budget issue.
Yeah, exactly. But a geopolitical vulnerability means my national banking infrastructure might go dark because two diplomats got into an argument at the UN.
Imagine if Apple suddenly announced that iOS 18 is simply too powerful for foreign users, so iPhones outside the US will be permanently throttled. Or if Microsoft said its Azure cloud services, which run global hospitals, are now restricted to American businesses. The world wouldn't just say, okay, right, competitors wouldn't just sit on their hands.
No, they would flood the zone. And that anxiety creates this massive vacuum that Chinese model makers are uniquely positioned to fill. I mean, for them, this American export restriction is like a generational marketing opportunity.
Because they can offer the one thing the United States is actively revoking, which is certainty.
Exactly. Their pitch to the global south, to Europe, to anyone feeling anxious, it relies entirely on the mechanics of ownership. The Chinese proposition basically writes itself. Do not rely on a cloud service hosted in California. Download our open weight model.
Right, host it locally.
Host it physically on your own domestic servers, fine-tune it for your local languages, and control the full software stack.
Let's explain what that actually means structurally for the listener. Because controlling the full stack means you aren't just sending a prompt to a server in Nevada and waiting for an answer.
Right.
It means the actual neural network, the mathematical brain making the decisions, lives on a hard drive in your own country. Nobody can flip a switch and deny you access.
Right, and even if that Chinese model isn't the absolute smartest in the world, I mean, even if it's a whole generation behind Anthropic's Mythos 5, it possesses the most valuable feature of all. It is permanent.
Yeah.
A slightly inferior model that a nation fully owns will always beat a genius-level model that comes with political strings attached.
Okay, so if the global market starts buying into that pitch, if Europe, India, the Middle East start turning to domestic champions or Chinese alternatives just for peace of mind, the financial floor underneath the American AI boom really starts to shake.
It does.
Let's talk about the trillion-dollar stock market ripple effect here. Because we're looking at heavy hitters, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, their valuations are historic.
And those valuations are fundamentally priced on the assumption of a borderless world. They're not valued merely as successful domestic tech companies. Wall Street is valuing them as the foundational infrastructure of the future global economy.
Right.
The math behind a multi-trillion-dollar market cap assumes that every major bank in Frankfurt, every manufacturer in Tokyo, every university in Mumbai will eventually build their operations on American silicon and American algorithms.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Let's say I'm the chief technology officer of that German bank in Frankfurt. I know about the geopolitical risk. I know about the API kill switches.
Yeah.
But if the American models are just so good, like if Mythos 5 can spot financial fraud 30% better than the local European alternative, don't I have a fiduciary duty to use the American model anyway? Isn't the performance gap just too wide to ignore?
You might use it, sure, but you'll use it very differently than Wall Street is hoping. The op-ed makes a vital distinction here between using a tool for convenience versus relying on it for dependence. As a German bank, you might allow your employees to use the American model to draft routine emails or summarize basic reports, handle non-critical workflows.
Right, so I'll use it tactically.
Yeah.
But I won't wire my core proprietary fraud detection architecture into it.
You absolutely will not build your sovereign critical infrastructure on a platform that is politically conditional. And that hesitation is a poison pill for enterprise software valuations. Because in the tech world, the holy grail is lock-in.
Oh, yeah.
You want an enterprise to integrate your software so deeply into their operations that leaving your ecosystem is practically impossible.
Because that's how you guarantee 10 years of recurring revenue. That's the dream.
Exactly. But sovereign AI intentionally breaks lock-in. The economic mechanics in the op-ed follow a very specific downward spiral. First, U.S. export controls introduce distrust into the global enterprise market. Second, that distrust accelerates massive foreign investment into sovereign, locally hosted AI programs. Third, as those sovereign alternatives become viable, foreign companies use them for their critical infrastructure, which completely shatters the lock-in effect for American platforms.
Wow. And then fourth, without that global lock-in, the long-term revenue projections for those American companies shrink dramatically.
Which instantly compresses their equity multiples. I mean, the multi-trillion-dollar valuations start to correct. So the argument here is that Washington might succeed in gaining a temporary national security blanket, but the cost of that blanket is permanently fracturing the commercial foundation that allowed the U.S. to dominate the industry in the first place.
So it's basically the risk of trading long-term economic supremacy for a short-term geopolitical firewall. But hold on. This entire thesis, the financial crash, the geopolitical tension, walling off the technology, it all relies on one massive glaring assumption, right? Which is that the United States actually possesses the physical ability to keep this technology locked in a box. Can you actually hoard artificial intelligence?
The physics of AI proliferation suggests it's incredibly unlikely, if not entirely impossible. The traditional mental model we have for export controls comes from the 20th century, specifically the containment of nuclear secrets.
All right, but AI is not a nuke. Guarding nuclear technology is a physical, tangible problem. You need rare enriched uranium. You need massive centrifuge facilities that spy satellites can literally track from orbit.
Yes.
You have a highly specialized physical supply chain. You can literally put armed guards at the doors of the facility.
Artificial intelligence operates on an entirely different plane of physics. The op-ed makes a stark comparison here, emphasizing that AI is infinitely more porous. Think about what a model actually is.
It's just math.
Exactly. At its core, an AI model is a massive file of weights, the billions of mathematical parameters and learned connections the system uses to make decisions. If those weights leak onto the internet, the core intelligence of the model is instantly available to anyone with a broadband connection.
Right, because it takes seconds to copy a file.
Yeah.
But it's not just the weights leaking, is it? There are other mechanisms driving this proliferation.
Oh, there's an entire ecosystem designed to spread this knowledge. Academic papers are published globally every single day. The brilliant researchers driving these breakthroughs migrate across borders all the time. And then you have these highly technical workarounds like distillation and the use of synthetic data.
Let's unpack those mechanisms for a second because they're crucial to understanding why the walls just won't hold. Distillation is essentially using a massive, brilliant model like Mythos 5 to secretly tutor and train a smaller, cheaper, locally owned model, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And then synthetic data is when you use the outputs of an advanced AI to generate the billions of data points you need to bootstrap a brand new system completely from scratch.
The tools to reverse engineer the frontier are already out there in the wild.
You know, it reminds me of the 1990s crypto wars. The US government literally tried to classify strong encryption software as a munition. They tried to ban the export of the math that keeps our credit cards safe online today.
Right, and it didn't work.
Because you can't ban math. The code leaked, it spread globally, and it became the open source bedrock of the entire internet.
That historical parallel is perfect.
Or to use a simpler analogy, trying to hoard AI isn't like guarding a stockpile of rare uranium in a subterranean vault. It's more like trying to keep a revolutionary chocolate chip cookie recipe a secret after you've already sold millions of the cookies and let people taste them.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
People already know the texture. They know the flavor profile. They know roughly what goes into it. Even if you lock the doors to your factory, millions of bakers are going to go into their own kitchens, experiment with the flour and the sugar, and eventually reverse engineer the exact same batter. What happens to the open source community if the US locks down these proprietary models?
Well, and that leads to what the op-ed calls the great irony of this entire situation. A crude, heavy-handed attempt to restrict access won't actually stop the technology from spreading. It will simply supercharge the open source and open weight movements around the world.
Wait, really? Because necessity is the mother of invention. If a European developer loses access to Anthropic's API, they don't just give up. They pour all their resources into local open source alternatives.
Exactly. Countries and developers might just decide that a slightly weaker model they actually own is vastly superior to a brilliant model that can vanish by executive order. And the net result of that is a geopolitical disaster for safety. Because if Washington slows down American frontier labs with heavy regulation while simultaneously incentivizing the rest of the world to rapidly fund and build their own decentralized models, AI development gets pushed entirely into the dark. It moves into channels with zero safety frameworks, zero oversight, and zero governability.
So the ultimate result isn't stopped AI diffusion. You just end up with a world where the most capable systems are being built outside the view of the people who originally designed the safety protocols.
Exactly.
Because if walling off the technology tanks the tech economy, humiliates our allies, and ironically makes the technology less safe, what is the actual solution here? How does a government protect national security without shattering the architecture of the future?
The author advocates for a much more nuanced cooperative approach. They suggest building an allied AI control regime. The core idea is to treat frontier AI as strategically sensitive, but to explicitly avoid turning it into a nationalist monopoly.
What does an allied regime look like mechanically, though?
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about a strongly worded UN resolution.
No, mechanically, it requires shared infrastructure. Washington should define clear, objective capability thresholds internationally. It requires fast-track access for trusted partner nations, so an allied bank in London has the exact same uninterrupted access as a bank in New York.
Right.
It means mathematically separating genuine military and cyber warfare risks from ordinary commercial and scientific use cases.
It also has to mean dealing with the human element, too. Like, you have to allow controlled, secure access for foreign national researchers inside U.S. labs, rather than just imposing these crude nationality walls that drain the talent pool.
Absolutely. Ultimately, the op-ed stresses that Washington must be hyper-aware of the message it's broadcasting. The world needs to see safety governance, not economic protectionism. If the message is, these systems are incredibly dangerous and humanity as a whole needs a coordinated framework to manage them, the international community might actually collaborate.
But if the message is perceived as hoarding, if it sounds like these systems are too powerful for you to handle, but they're perfectly safe for us to control, the trust that allowed America to lead the digital revolution will completely evaporate. A nation can dominate technology through sustained excellence, but it cannot indefinitely dominate it through conditional access.
Attempting to do so would be a historic, self-inflicted wound.
And this brings the stakes directly back to you, the listener. The software on your laptop, the apps on your phone, the data platforms your company relies on daily, they are all actively caught in this geopolitical tug of war. The US might win the short-term race to release the single most powerful model this year. But by weaponizing access, it risks losing its status as the trusted, neutral foundation of the global digital economy.
Losing the architecture of the AI century, as the text puts it.
Exactly. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over. If these U.S. restrictions act as a global catalyst, if they successfully push Europe, Asia, and the global open source community to rapidly collaborate, pool their compute, and develop massive open weight ecosystems, what happens in 5 years? What happens when a decentralized, globally built open source model inevitably surpasses the capabilities of the heavily restricted American systems? When the recipe the U.S. tried to hide ends up making a vastly superior cookie in a million kitchens around the world, who sets the rules for humanity then?